For example, I can only talk about the conferences that I plan to go to, national conferences. I mean, ASA conference occurs in October. They stop accepting abstracts on April 11th. So that kind of gives you an idea of the time frame where if you're looking to go to a conference in October, 10th month of the year, most of them are going to want it 5 or 6 months ahead of time. So that's just to give you an idea that you're not going to submit an abstract for a conference a month ahead. You're going to submit it about 6 months ahead of time. And that gives everybody involved, the conference presenter, conference administration, the people reading the abstracts and rating them and accepting or declining the abstracts, the people who are going to say yes or no to your abstract need time to look at all these thousands of abstracts that they get. So this, just to give you a timeline, let's say, it's March, we've submitted an abstract, yesterday for a national conference that's happening in September, and it's been accepted. So now we're moving on to the poster presentation phase. This is the point where we're making the poster. So pros of a poster presentation: presenting at a convention or a conference is a great way to network and to market yourself as a match applicant. It is specialty specific, which can demonstrate your expertise, interest, and commitment. It's a favorable addition to your ERAS application. You can easily turn into a case report write-up. You can easily turn a case report write-up into a poster, and there's no lengthy IRB approval. For clinical research or research that involves humans or animals, you have to have International Review Board approval, which is a lengthy process, and it takes a really long time to get done. Next, the cons. The cons of a poster presentation is the turnaround time from submission to presentation can be really long. Like I mentioned, again, ASA as an example, the deadline for submitting an abstract for the medically challenging cases is April 11th, and the actual conference isn't until October. So there's a long time between submission and presentation, which is a con. And also keep in mind that national conferences get thousands of submissions. They get thousands and thousands of submissions. So if you were to write an abstract, even if it's really well written, it might not interest the people. It might not interest the people that are reading it. It might not interest the reviewers. It might be poorly written. And so just don't be discouraged if you submit an abstract to a national conference and it gets rejected. Keep the abstract, work on it more. So you can resubmit it to other conferences. You can submit it to local conferences. You can turn it into a written case report and try to submit it to a journal. So don't be discouraged if you get an abstract rejected by a national conference. It happens. It happened to me. It happens to a lot of students. But the better, the better written and the more concise and the more unique the case is, the more likely it is for it to be accepted. So how to create a poster presentation? So first, choose a clear and concise title to summarize the research. A lot of these conferences are going to have guidelines for the specific title. For example, they don't want the title to have every letter be capitalized. They want the title, for example, to have only to capitalize only the words that are unique and relevant. So you don't capitalize words like with or how, or you'll only capitalize certain important words. So choose a clear and concise title. Use a poster presentation template for structure and guidance and to estimate the space you need. Later on, I'm going to provide resources that talk about that specifically, so you can look into that on your own time. But I'm going to kind of skim through this quickly. Divide your poster into a minimum of 5 to 6 sections using a bold heading for each section. So the poster section for a case report should be introduction, background. These two parts are replaced by case presentation. Then you have discussion and conclusion, references, and acknowledgements, if they're applicable. Acknowledgements include things like if you received funding to help pay for the poster, or and so on. Of course, you want to include the authors right under the title. So it goes title, author, introduction, background. If it's a case report, case presentation, section for discussion, which is going to be the bulk of it, a small section for conclusion, references, and then some people include learning objectives. So learning objectives can be useful as well. So after choosing a template, don't ignore alignment. Use the margins in the template as a guide. Remember, a good design is an effective poster, and I'll show you what a good design and an effective poster looks like, and one that doesn't look great, so you guys can see the difference. So just so you guys are aware, Trinity School of Medicine has a template made for Trinity students. It is accessible on the SGA Georgia website, or you can reach out to the SGA research chairs, Austin and Nicole, for a copy. But it should be easily accessible by most students. A lot of students already have them. So if you don't know how to have access to this, just ask another fellow student or just reach out to SGA or look on the website. But yeah, Trinity has a template already made. Of course, there are additional templates. Additionally, you can use multiple programs to make this to make your poster. I personally use Google Slides because I use Mac, but if you are a PC user, Microsoft PowerPoint is a fantastic tool. I've never used Poster Nerd. Adobe Illustrator is more high-end and it requires a subscription. There's also OpenOffice, GIMP, as well as Photoshop. But again, Google Slides and Microsoft PowerPoint are the two most often used poster making platforms. But here's examples of additional poster templates. Like I said, later on, I'm going to include some links for you guys to read later on that talks about layout. So as you guys can see here, go back here, you want to include your abstract here. Sometimes it's not necessary to include the abstract, so it depends. You'll know based on your conference introduction, the case report section here. If there are any images, graphs, or anything of the sort, you include it here. But of course, with every image, you have a description, such as figure 1, period, and a description of the image. Discussion, which is a big part, conclusion. The references section, sometimes people get rid of the abstract, move the introduction up, and put references here. Or sometimes people switch the discussion image section so that the discussion section has a whole column. Put images here, and then make the conclusion smaller, and then put references here. But typically you want your references to be at the bottom of the poster. It's more ideal for the references to be at the bottom right part of the poster, because that's kind of the flow of how people look at posters. So references should be here. Ideally not here, even though it's acceptable, but it's best to put it here. So I advise everybody to put references below conclusion section in this bottom right hand area. Nicole is providing information as we go. So she has included our email addresses, and she has also put a link to a workshop regarding how to write a case report that's on YouTube. So make sure to check that out. All right, we'll move on. So best practices for posters. Don't forget to include our school. Represent Trinity logo on your poster. A good rule of thumb. We'll take questions at the end, Bharat. Thank you, though. A good rule of thumb is to have the poster, the Trinity logo, either at the top right or the top left part of the poster. Try to avoid text-heavy posters, which I'll show later on. My first poster was garbage, I'll be honest. When I presented a treatment-resistant depression, a case of treatment-resistant depression and emerging therapeutic approaches at AMSACON 2022, it was so wordy. There was just so many words on it. And so that was an early mistake that I made. But you want to avoid posters that are really wordy or text-heavy. Short paragraphs and bulleted lists are preferred. Use common fonts. Don't use Comic Sans. Don't use Helvetia. Don't use random fonts. Just stick with Times New Roman, Arial, or Garamond. So no smaller than 16 point for text, unless it's for references. References are allowed to be 12 points, but 16 points or more for text in the body of the poster. That includes abstract, introduction, all the way down to conclusion. However, again, the references can be 12. Avoid using specialty fonts. Use images and graphics that have a high resolution as at least 125 to 225 dpi. I believe this means pixels per something. This is a way to describe the resolution. So the resolution of your images should be at least 125 to 225. And look up how to find out the resolution of images. Use high contrast colors. This is really important because sometimes I've seen posters that use, for example, light blue and deep green. So those aren't really high contrast colors. You want to use a very light color and a very dark color for text, or the opposite. A very dark background with a very light text, or very dark text with very light background. So high contrast colors are important. Use visuals. Graphics and figures are better than words. Don't be afraid of white space. 30 to 45% of posters can be blank. So if there's empty space, that's perfectly fine. That's great. Empty space makes people feel comfortable when they're looking at your poster. They're not overwhelmed. If you guys want to see my TRD poster, I'm happy to show it to you guys because it is a bad example of a poster. My TRD, my first poster I presented at AmsaCon, like I mentioned earlier, was bad because there was no empty space and it was very wordy. So using less words and having empty space is always better. And then lastly, prepare a short pitch for your presentations. 1 to 3 minutes is recommended, where you answer what is the topic, what did you find out, what are the results, why is this relevant or important. So having an elevator pitch where you can just talk about your poster in 1 to 2 minutes is really important for presenting at the conferences. Here are examples of really good posters. The one on the left was written by Dr. Kyla Swain, who graduated last year, was part of Match 2023. The one on the right was written by Dr. Sierra Smith, also matched last year, class of 2023. These are both really amazing posters. They're both presented at AmsaCon, I believe. And look at the amount of white space on Dr. Smith's poster, like right here, empty space, empty space, empty space. Really good use of images, very concise. Same thing on Dr. Swain's. It has introduction and background, methods. Her results was more her results were a lot. They took up most of the poster because her topic was about the depiction of abortion care in cinema over the last century. So she talked about her methods and then used really great imaging to talk about this topic, use a discussion, and then the references again at the bottom right-hand corner, and they could be 12 font, but nothing less than 12 font for references. And then the body, 16 points, 16-point font and above. And then on the right, same kind of thing, background objectives. It's really important to have a background and objectives, or you can call it introduction and background. But just having introduction, background, and objectives is really important. She included learning objectives, which are these three right here, to provide a clear and concise, accurate abortion infographic available in both English and Spanish, and so on. So learning objectives are really useful.